In the first MyEnergyBalance tutorial, I reviewed how to create an account on the MyEnergyBalance website and how to use the iPhone app. In the second tutorial, I will review the features and functions of the website. It is important to note that you do not need the iPhone app to use the website. The iPhone app is just another tool for assisting you in remembering and recording your diet intake and energy expenditure. But you can easily analyze your diet intake and energy expenditure using just the website. You don't need the iPhone app. So let's start by logging into your account on the MyEnergyBalance website. Just go to www.myenergybalance.net and that'll bring you to the login page. If you've been to the login page before and had clicked the Remember Me button, your email address and password will already be entered in the box and you can just select Login. This takes you directly to the MyEnergyBalance homepage. If you look toward the bottom, you'll notice that there are links to video tutorials, including a shorter version of this tutorial. And you'll also notice along the top, there are 4 navigation buttons: Home, Diet Analysis, Energy Expenditure Analysis, and Reports. We'll get to those in a moment. There's also a link that allows you to download the iPhone app if you want to do that. And up in the right corner here with this little down arrow next to your login name is links to My Info, a link to change your password, and a link to sign out. Let's take a quick look at just the My Info option. This brings up the information that you entered about yourself when you first registered on the MyEnergyBalance website and created an account. You can change that information here if you like, but we'll keep it the same and return to the home page. Now let's go through each of the 4, or 3 actually, major menu items, starting with the diet analysis. Recall from the first tutorial that you cannot analyze your diet from the iPhone app. You can only use the iPhone app to help you record what you ate so that you can then analyze this using the features on this website. When you select the diet analysis option, the current day is selected by default. As with the iPhone app, you can change the date by clicking the calendar icon next to the date. Then you would just select that particular date that you want and then hit the Go button. But we're going to stick with the current date, which in this case is December 5th. Notice that there are many pictures of foods for this particular day. These represent foods that were entered from the iPhone app. If you do not have the iPhone app or have not used it, then there may be no foods listed here unless you happen to have entered them on the website earlier. A scroll bar along the right side of the food pictures allows you to scroll down to all the pictures of foods for that particular day. Remember, these foods have not yet been matched to foods in the USDA database. So the next step in the process is to match each of these foods and, if necessary, add any additional foods that we ate on this particular day. Let's start by adding an additional food. For example, let's assume that we just remembered that we had a glass of orange juice with our breakfast this morning. To add a food to the list, just select the Add Intake button. A search box appears below 2 tabs, the USDA database and the My Pantry tab. I'll explain the My Pantry tab later. For now, let's look for our orange juice in the USDA database. Just enter orange juice in the search box and then click the search icon. You'll notice that 22 search results are listed. You can narrow the search by adding additional search terms. For example, if we add the word Tropicana and then hit the search button, it narrows it down to only 1 possible match. It turns out that we did have Tropicana orange juice, so we'll select that. Adding search terms to your search is particularly helpful when your initial search results in a long list of possible matches. In the case of our orange juice example, it would not have been too hard to find our match among the 22 possible matches without having added the word Tropicana. But sometimes you'll end up with a list of a much longer list of possible matches. So by adding additional terms to narrow the search, it can make it easier to find the food that you're looking to match. When you are satisfied that you have found the item that matches the food in your list, just click the radio button next to the food, in this case Tropicana orange juice, and then click Select. The orange juice is now added to the top of the list of foods for this day. Of course, since we did not take a picture of the actual food with the iPhone app, no image is listed for this food. We now need to enter a serving description for the orange juice. Just select the down arrow next to the serving description to see the various options for the serving descriptions for this orange juice. Let's use the 1 fluid ounce description. Next, we need to indicate how many of these servings we consumed. Let's assume we drank 8 ounces of orange juice. Just add an 8 in the number of servings and click Save. It might look like the orange juice now has disappeared, but actually all match foods then get moved to the bottom of the list. So our orange juice now is at the bottom of the list, and any foods that have not yet been matched appear higher up in the list. Now, as it turns out, I often have a glass of orange juice with breakfast in the morning. So rather than having to add this as a new food each time, I could simply select the Add to Pantry option by just selecting this button. Notice it says that it's been added successfully to the My Pantry. Next time I need to enter orange juice for my food intake, I can just select Add Intake and then select the My Pantry tab and select the orange juice from the list of foods in my pantry. Another food that I like to have for breakfast in the morning is a bowl of Cheerios with a sliced banana and 2% milk. Each time I have this for breakfast, I can enter each of the items separately, that is the 2% milk, the banana, the Cheerios, or I can create a recipe and then simply save the recipe to my pantry. Let's give that a try. Select the Create Recipe option, then enter a name for the recipe. We'll call this Cheerios and banana. Then select Add Item. Again, the USDA database tab opens up, and we could start to add items to our recipe. In this case, the recipe only contains 3 items, Cheerios, banana, and 2% milk. Let's start with the Cheerios. So enter Cheerios in the search box. 10 possible matches come up. We don't need to add another search term because we could easily find the one that we want among this short list of 10 items. So let's choose Cheerios, put it in the radio button, and choose Select. Now we need to choose a serving description for the Cheerios. Let's choose 1 cup. And how many servings of that 1 cup do we have in the morning? We'll say we have 1 serving of 1 cup. In other words, we eat 1 cup of Cheerios in the morning. And don't select the Save button just yet. Wait until you've added all the items for your recipe. So the next item we're going to add to this recipe is the banana. Let's do Add Item. Search for banana. Notice that 77 possible matches to the search banana are returned. That might be a long list to just find 1 raw banana. Although, we'll enter the word raw here to see if that brings up or narrows a list. That narrows it down to just 3 terms, and again we could easily see now our raw banana as an option, so let's select that. Again, we need to choose a serving description. Let's say it's a medium banana. And how many servings of that banana do we put on our Cheerios? Well, let's say I slice a half of that banana on my Cheerios in the morning, so just enter 0.5. And now there's just one other item that we need to add to this recipe to complete it, and that is the 2% milk. So let's go to Add Item and search for milk. We'll put 2% in. And again, it returns 13 possible matches. We don't need to add another search term. We could easily find our choice among the 13. We're going to choose cow's milk 2% fat and choose Select. Again, we need to indicate the serving description for the milk. We'll use the cup for serving description. And how much of that cup do we put on our Cheerios? Again, let's say we put a half a cup of milk on our Cheerios. And now we've completed our recipe. We just need to hit the Save button. And our Cheerios and banana recipe are now saved to the My Pantry tab, along with the orange juice that we saved earlier. Now, next time, if I have Cheerios and a banana and 2% milk for breakfast, I don't need to enter each of the items separately. I can just go to My Pantry and select it to enter it into that day's food intake. So you can see that using the recipe function can save you a lot of time if you eat a particular combination of foods, whether it be something simple like our Cheerios, banana, and milk example, or more complicated recipes such as, a homemade beef stew or some other casserole, for example. Since you're going to have to enter all of the items in a food recipe the first time you analyze it, you might as well create it as a recipe now, in case you have it again sometime in the future. Anytime you want to return to the complete list of food items for a particular day, just go back to the Diet Analysis tab. And again, you can see all the foods that we have for that day. Let's actually go ahead and now match our Cheerios that we had on this particular day, and I'll show you how you can use the pantry. You just click on the Match button. Now, instead of choosing the USDA database, we're going to choose the My Pantry. Select the Cheerios and banana recipe. How many servings of that do we have? In case we had a different amount than we had earlier, we're going to say we have the same amount, the one serving, which included 1 cup of Cheerios, a half a cup of milk, and a half a sliced banana. And save. Now, since that's matched, again, it gets moved toward the bottom of the list along with the Tropicana orange juice that we matched earlier, and the remaining foods that we haven't yet matched appear toward the top of the list. So you would now need to go ahead and match the remaining foods for that particular day or add any additional foods for that particular day and match them to either the USDA database or to the My Pantry option. Again, I would suggest that for any foods that contain more than one item or foods that you have more often than just once, you should automatically save them to your pantry just in case you have them again. You won't have to search for all the items separately. That pretty much covers how to use the diet analysis function to match the foods that you ate into the USDA database. Once the foods are matched and the serving sizes and number of servings are selected for all the foods you ate, you can then view a report of the nutrient analysis of that day's diet using the Reports function on the MyEnergyBalance website. We'll get to this in just a little bit. Now let's review how to use the Energy Expenditure function. Let's first click on Energy Expenditure. And let's assume that we've already entered some of this information from the iPhone app. But again, if you don't have the iPhone app, you could automatically enter it, or you can enter it all simply from going directly to this function on the website. When you select the Energy and Expenditure Analysis link, you are taken to the information for the current date by default, in our case December 5th. You can choose a different date by clicking the calendar icon next to the date. Remember that dates that are colored either red or green indicate dates for which at least some energy expenditure information has already been entered. You'll notice that for December 5th it's colored green, which means that it contains information related to both energy intake and diet analysis, because we just analyzed some of our diet for December 5th, and we already have some information entered on energy expenditure that we had entered from the iPhone app. So it appears as a green date on the calendar. We're going to stick with December 5th as our date that we're going to work on here. Notice that for this date, the amount of sleep you had last night has already been entered. We had 8 hours of sleep, as well as the amount of time you spent in sedentary activities, 3 hours and 15 minutes. And we entered the amount of time we spent bowling on this particular day, 2 hours and 30 minutes. You can see now that we've accounted for all but 10 hours and 15 minutes that we still have to account for in a 24-hour day period. Let's now add a few additional activities. In addition to bowling, I also raked the lawn for 2 hours. So select Add Activities, and then select Lawn and Garden from the drop-down menu, and look for Raking Lawn. I see it here toward the bottom. I'm not sure why there are two raking lawns, but we'll choose just the top raking lawn, and then choose Select. Now, how long did we rake the lawn? Let's say we raked it for 2 hours. You could add any other comments you want to make here that'll be saved to that activity too, in case there's something that about it in particular you want to remind yourself about. And then just click Save. Notice now that raking the lawn for 2 hours has been added to the list of activities for that day. And also you'll notice that the number of calories expended in raking the lawn for 2 hours is also listed here. And notice now that the time remaining in the day has been reduced by 2 hours to 8 hours and 15 minutes. So we still have 8 hours and 15 minutes to account for. We still need to assign this remaining time to either activity or some activity or inactivity. Let's assume that I also practiced the piano for an hour and I read in a chair for 2 hours. So let's add those. Add activity. Select from the drop-down menu, music playing, piano or organ. Select 1 hour and save. And I read in a chair for 2 hours, so let's go to Add Activities. And I know that reading in a chair, I think, is under Miscellaneous. Sitting reading. Select 2 hours of reading in a chair. And save. And notice now that we have accounted for all but 5 hours and 15 minutes of the 24-hour day. Let's say that's all the real activity that we did for that day, and any remaining activity was basically inactivity. If we now choose Save, a message box comes up that says, you still have 5 hours and 15 minutes remaining unaccounted for. Would you like to assign this remaining time to inactivity? If you answer no, you will be returned back to the screen and the day will indicate that some of the day has not yet been accounted for. But if you're sure that you don't want to add any other activities, and you can always go back and edit this later if you remember some activity, but we're going to say yes. Notice now that the full 24 hours have been accounted for. They include 8 hours of sleep, 3 hours where you were basically sitting quietly or reclining. That's just time that you estimated that you were in basic sedentary activity. Then the 5 hours and 15 minutes that you later assigned to inactivity because you didn't have any other activities that you were doing all day. You were, I put standing reading instead of sitting reading, but that's okay. 2 hours of standing and reading, 1 hour of playing the piano, 2 hours of raking the lawn, 2 hours and 30 minutes of bowling. We've now accounted for all the activities for that day. You could remove any of these activities by just clicking the X button next to one of the activities. Actually, let's do that. We'll try that. We'll remove the X from the standing reading. And we'll add the activity for sitting reading under Miscellaneous. Sitting reading a book. Select 2 hours. Again, we've now still accounted for 24 hours of activity. So now we have activity for this particular day of December 5th accounted for. We have some foods entered for December 5th of this day. We can now look at the Reports function. When you click on the Reports function, the current date is chosen by default, December 5th. You can change this to a different date by selecting the calendar icon next to the date. Remember, you can only view diet analysis reports for days that are colored either blue or green. You can only view energy expenditure reports for days that are colored red or green. And you can only view energy balance reports for days that are colored green, meaning that they are days for which both diet analysis and energy expenditure data have been entered, both of which are needed to generate an energy balance report. Let's start by looking at the diet analysis report for December 5th, 2014. By default, the report shows a summary analysis of all the foods consumed on that day. In addition to the nutrients reported here, you can customize the report to add or remove particular nutrients by just selecting the Customize button. Let's try that. Choose Customize. Then you can just select nutrients that you would like to include in the report. Let's add a few. We'll add vitamin K, vitamin B12, and the omega-3 fatty acid EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, and then click Submit. Notice that the additional nutrients are now included in the report: EPA, vitamin K, and vitamin B12. So you can include, I think, as many as about 22 different items in the report by selecting the Customize button. You could also look at the nutrient analysis of individual foods in your day's intake. Just select the Individual Items option. And remember, we only matched 2 foods for that particular day. We didn't finish matching the other foods. So if you want to view a report of the nutrient analysis of my Cheerios and banana recipe, just do View Report, and you can see a breakdown of the nutrient analysis of the Cheerios. To close this, just select the X and it'll return you to where you were before. Now, you can't customize the report of the individual foods. You can only do that for the analysis of the whole diet. If you want to see the breakdown nutrient analysis for the orange juice, just do View Report, and you can see the nutrient analysis for the orange juice. Notice that you can also email this report to you or to someone else, and you could print the report. You could also do that with the summary report for the entire day. You can email it or you can print it. Now let's look at the energy expenditure report option. Go to Reports and just click Energy Expenditure. When you click on the energy expenditure report, a summary report for the selected date is displayed. This report includes an estimate of your resting energy expenditure, in our case 1,718 kilocalories, and the total calories expended in all activities for the day, 2,641 kilocalories. This 2,641 kilocalorie estimate includes the value for your estimated resting energy expenditure. The report also estimates the thermic effect of food energy expenditure, the energy your body uses to digest and absorb your food. For this particular day, it was 264 kilocalories. So your total daily energy expenditure for this particular day, December 5th, is 2,905 kilocalories. You can choose to view the energy expended in the individual activities that you reported. Just select the View Activities button, and it takes you back to that earlier page that we saw where all the activities for the day are listed, along with, in the right-hand side, the calories expended in each of those activities. To return to the energy expenditure report function, just go to Reports, Energy Expenditure. Again, you can email this report or print this report if you choose. Finally, let's look at the Energy Balance Report option. Click on the Energy Balance Report. This option allows you to view an estimate of your energy balance based on either your average energy balance for all the days for which you entered complete diet analysis and energy expenditure data, or your energy balance for a particular day for which you have both diet analysis and energy expenditure data, in other words, a green day on the calendar. Notice that my energy balance for this particular day is minus 2,370 kilocalories. This is a very negative value, but that's because we only matched 2 foods in our diet analysis, the orange juice and a bowl of Cheerios. That's not much of a calorie intake for the day, given the number of calories that we expended for the day, and that's why this number is so negative. In a realistic example, the amount of energy intake that you would consume in a day would have been much higher than just those associated with a bowl of Cheerios and an orange juice. Nevertheless, you can choose to view a 1-month, 6-month, or 1-year graphic representation of how your weight would change over time given the particular energy balance estimate. So by default, it shows your current weight, which was from our info that we entered earlier, 185 pounds. We could change that here if we like, in case you don't still weigh 185 pounds. And you could choose the time frame that you want the graph to show. In our case, we chose 1 month. And you can see that over the 1-month period, our weight would go from 185 pounds down to whatever that is, 165 pounds. You could roll your mouse over it, due to a negative energy balance of minus 2,370 kilocalories if we were to maintain that negative energy balance over the full month. Now, of course, if you go to a longer period of time, 6 months, you can see that the weight loss is going to be more dramatic. This would be a serious problem if you had a negative energy balance of minus 2,370 kilocalories for a very long period of time. But again, this is not a realistic number. It reflects the fact that we didn't analyze all the foods in our diet for that day. So that pretty much sums up how to use the MyEnergyBalance website. Give it a try. I think most of it is pretty self-explanatory. You can't really break it, I hope, so you just feel free to play around with it and see how it works. If you have any problems or questions with it or comments about it, you can go to the Contact Me link on the home page, toward the bottom of the home page. If you have any questions, you can just email me at stephen.pintaro@uvm.edu.